Welcome back, everybody, to the Hearthstone Global Games. Belgium move forward to the second stage, but unfortunately, France are eliminated. Now we have Russia versus Argentina, and I've got Lorinda on the desk with me. Hey, buddy.
How's it going?
I'm pretty good.
How's your toys?
Oh, great, yeah. You've broken a few of them, but apart from that, I'm feeling nice and confident about today. So, Russia versus Argentina then. Before we get into everything about both of these teams, any kind of favourites just from gut instinct?
Well, Sottle picked Russia.
Okay, so Argentina then.
Yeah, exactly. I like Argentina. I'm a big fan of PNC. Watched his rise to the top, and he's still going up. So he's looking to catch up some of these massive names from Russia, though, of course, who are going to be representing them today.
Yeah, Russia, obviously such a huge team. They have some fantastic players, but here is Group C then. Argentina in the position today that if they win, they will qualify for the second stage. If Russia win, however, they will certainly be in a good position. The rest of the group, though, Neil, they'll all be hoping that Russia lose this one, to be honest.
Yeah, there's plenty more to come from this group. As you can see there, most of the teams can still get to that magical 3 wins, and if 4 teams get there, it all goes to game record, so they'll be hoping that Russia's one of the teams that can get kicked out.
And we touched on it briefly, and I said that Russia's just full of absolute crazy players. I mean, you've got the world champion, or at least previous world champion, Pavel.
Yeah, he's the world champion.
Just casually there in your team as well. That's always going to help with team morale, right?
Yeah, just a little bit, right? Because you've also got Standardachi, who just casually wins the Winter Championships, and Silvername, who helps everybody's morale by bringing thousands and thousands of people to the stream. Hi, Silvername guys, we love you. Give us a bit of Russian, thanks. And Inner as well, a very strong player. Just narrowly missed out this time around, got to the top 8 of HCT.
On the other side then, PNC, Snail, Nalgaiden and Ildima. Of course, there are some fantastic players there in their own right. I mean, just in general, across like Copa America tournaments, these are the names that you will always see popping up.
Right, time and time again, these guys are getting into those Copa America endings. I think PNC won Season 3, if I remember correctly. Snail, as a Tavern hero, got to HCT Winter last time around. And yeah, Nalgaiden just made the top 8 recently in the Copa America, so what are you going to tell us?
Argentina, you can see there, statistically, spend the most time listening to the radio in the world with an average of 2.1 hours per week, Neil.
Was that for the whole country?
Yep, in general, the whole country.
Just 2 hours?
Just two hours.
What do they do for the other 22 hours?
I have no idea, and actually I don't really want to know. Russia, however, has the longest railway in the world, Neil.
And how long is that?
5,700 miles.
So if you listened to the radio with an Argentinian whilst on that railway going somewhere, you would have nothing to do for most of the trip.
No, exactly. They'd just be like, oh, my 3.1 hours is up. Turn off that radio and get back on my train journey. Here we go then. The classes for both Argentina and Russia. If you have not watched the Global Games before, it is a best of 5, and all 9 classes are brought by both teams, both countries. And if we get to 2 and 2, we get to an ace match, which is why you see some of the players repeated their names because they get the chance to play again. Sometimes we see teams save their ace player as the best player. Other teams have just shared it around, Neil. We saw yesterday, there was a few teams that were saying, well, we just want everyone to have a go at playing twice.
Yeah, that's really, or having a go at not playing at all, depending on the score. Yeah, that was just interesting to me that some of the teams just didn't care. And yeah, like we've seen other teams say, well, we're going to put the worst player on, or the worst perceived player, the least experienced player, driving, so that he doesn't have to do so much thinking, he can just be told what to do. And we've seen decks like Miracle Rogue, where you just can't do that, you need a specialist.
Yeah, and you don't always, I don't think you'll get offence from players in that team as well. They won't say, oh, I'm offended because you're putting me first. People know if they have less experience than the rest of their teammates. There's a lot of respect throughout these teams, in my opinion. But game number 1 then, PNC versus Inner, Warrior versus the Druid, a matchup that just shows up constantly. Aggro Druid has been favoured, to be honest, in general, across the global games. People seem to like having that punch. They like to be able to pack a punch. But of course, J Druid can be absolutely fantastic as well.
Argentina have only played 4 matches, and they've played 8 different classes already.
Wow.
Whereas Russia have played 3 matches, and they've only played 6 different classes. So maybe Argentina that little bit harder to predict than Russia. This is, however, Russia's first time playing Druid. So what do I know?
And that was something that we brought up quite a lot when we first started the Global Games, about being predictable and how it affects your decision making when picking against an opponent. Do you think that's become less apparent the further we've got into the global games?
I think teams have got better at mixing it up, but that's only because it was apparent early on that the predictable teams were being
predictable.
Yeah. Yeah, that. Anyway, so I think we have now seen all of the teams fall into line and say, well, we don't want to be too predictable. We need to be mixing it up. We saw that at the HCT last week where everybody tried to be unpredictable and all bought the same thing.
Because in general, the meta is somewhat control-based. That was where it went after Ungaro. Everyone saying, oh, we're leading finally to like our first big control meta. And then people were like, no. Aggro Druid, Pirate Warrior. We're still going to be there. We're still going to be there to shake things up, which is a good thing.
Right.
It does help having aggro in meta as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, and for all of its dislike amongst some of the people watching occasionally, Quest Rogue and Jade Druid keep it all in check. They're sort of the middle ground where if control gets out of hand, we'll just play like Quest Rogue, Jade Druid, destroy people. And if it goes the other way too much with those decks that people tend to find a little bit annoying, they can just smash them in the face and cheer themselves up.
And we haven't seen any Warlock still today, and we see it very rarely as well. Unfortunately, in the intro video when we're talking about Hunter being, oh, are we going to bring Hunter? We're going to see Hunter.
We've seen plenty of Hunter.
We've seen lots of Hunter. Maybe eventually we'll see some more Warlock. But here we go, the first game of the day. Who cares about a control meta, Neil, when you can play two aggressive lineups? We saw this aggro Druid become very popular lately. It was shown up as a rank 1 legend deck with Genzo the Shark being an interesting inclusion, but also a somewhat obvious one, actually. When you think about it, it's a pretty good card for aggro Druid.
Yeah, and I have to hand it to him. I hate handing it to him, but Raven has sort of pinned his colours to Genzo the Shark for some time now. Keeps saying it's going to be a big card, and like you say, this made rank 1 legend. I believe it was Fino that did that about 2 or 3 days ago.
Indeed, so it's become very popular, and it's something that we've seen in global games as well. As soon as a deck is popularized, as soon as you notice some sort of pattern of it achieving decent results, not just on ladder but in tournaments as well, why not bring it to the global games? But here we go then, Neil. Aggro Pirate Warrior against the aggro Druid. Any favourites for you?
So when you just get these aggro versus aggro matches, it's who is the fastest, and I think that Druid is the fastest deck in the whole of Hearthstone right now. So
fastest in the West.
Fastest in the East as well.
Everywhere, across the whole of the global games.
Nice work indeed. Yeah, and it's just a little bit quicker because of the Savage Roar in particular. And it also has that reload potential of the Living Mana.
Yeah. Living Mana is just an absolutely filthy card. It makes me want to have a shower every time I see it be played.
Which is used by you.
Yeah.
To be fair.
It is used by me a lot. I do like using cards that are filthy. Interesting that Inner didn't decide to actually innovate out Mark of Yasiraj there. Instead, he valued having the innovate possibility into Genzo the next turn.
Yeah, which is pretty impressive. Right? Just empty your hand and refill it again. Wonder if he'll change his mind now, but if he does change his mind and go for Innovate Hydra to fix his curve into Genzo, this turn is do nothing. Well, it's killer 1/1. But
it's hero power, just take that pesky pirate off the board, which does have merit as well. You know, your opponent has got a coin. You know that the cultist can just appear and be very much a nuisance. Turn that 1-attack weapon into a 2-attack one. So yeah, it is going to be the case of a possible Hydra next turn. And the Hydra in general is somewhat of an unpopular card as well, Neil. There's some people who absolutely swear by it in aggro Druid and say you need it to win certain games. Others will just say outright loses you games.
I think that what's happened is that people have realised that Druid just runs out of stuff that little bit quickly. Bitter Tide is a lot of numbers, which is basically the equivalent of stuff. And by having 1 or 2 Bitter Tides in there, you can have a bonus 5-drop to go alongside your Living Mana. And of course, Genzo the Shark is just a complete refill. I really like the fact that the aggro Druid, it's still the fastest deck, and it's taken its foot off the pedal very slightly.
It has, especially with the inclusions like Tar Creeper, as you can see, really good in the mirror matchup, and it can work out very good against aggro as well, we're seeing. So now for PNC, he's saying, well, that's an 8/8 that we're going to be facing down every turn. Can we afford to ignore it? Is there any way to remove it?
And how many times do we mind trading into it and doing a series of 3 damages to face? In this occasion, actually, it's going to be hard enough to get the board as it is, so you can't just keep trading stuff into it. They do obviously have the option to just kill it here and now at the expense of most of their board.
Yeah, you could use the Heroic Strike, of course, if you wanted to trade off. You will be putting 6 damage to your opposition anyway. but you are taking 8. I guess how worried are you about taking that 8 damage? I think you're more worried about taking 16 damage across 2 turns than just 8 damage now. So maybe you do just get rid of it, potentially follow up with a deckhand as well, because then you're putting something on the board that they have to worry about.
PNC is worrying, in my opinion, about why that Innovate wasn't played turn 1, because that Bitter Tide came off the top. So what were they waiting to play on turn 2 before they saw the Bitter Tide Hydra? And I think PNC will have noticed that. I think that's why he's pretty animated there, pretty chatty. It's like, well, actually, what exactly was the plan here?
PNC opting to go down the route of playing the deckhand as well, rather than using the heroic strike, so saving that direct damage to face a guaranteed 4 damage later, unless there was a taunt in the way. And now this Genzo doesn't look so hot, it doesn't look like it will get value, but importantly for Russia, is it still something that Argentina have to worry about? It's still a threat that they're constantly having to deal with, and we may get to a position where Russia say, okay, so you spent all that time worrying about our board, we're equal in life total, and then we just drop something like a living mana to win the game.
Right, and that's going to be a massive concern. And the first thing that Argentina have got to do in this 75 seconds, by the way, so it's important that they don't argue with each other or they communicate well, is work out, can we just empty most of our hand and benefit more from Genzo than the Druid can, given that the Druid's not been doing much for the first 2 or 3 turns. Maybe their hand is a bit heavy.
That's something that I actually hadn't contemplated, just ignoring Genzo.
And just make your own board and start using his advantage to your advantage. They're going to be scared of doing that, but they'll have worked out, they can see how they can make a normal Hearthstone turn. So they'll spend that time now working out, can we actually be a bit sneaky and just dump our hand and tell Genzo, sure, give us some cards.
Certainly a risky decision.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like they're going to go with that decision, but this play was obvious, so they spent their whole turn looking for...
Yeah, it was something that they were worth considering, that's for sure. Sorry for cutting you off there, but...
That's absolutely fine.
Yeah,
it's meant to change.
Yeah.
To be that way around.
Yeah, but it was a nice situation for Argentina to be in, where they can make that consideration, where they can have that thought process. They have the board control now, and genuinely, or generally should I say, it is hard for the Druid to regain board control without living mana.
Right, and this will be the final straw in their decision. Last turn for Argentina. This board's good enough, we don't need to take a chance. We think we're winning as it stands. Again, a little bit worried about living mana, but I think Argentina would probably have worked out how they win that if the race looks good for them if living mana's played now anyway.
So options for Russia, they could just Power of the World, summon a Panther, put Mark of Yasiraj on it, and that is just another nuisance minion that Argentina have to deal with. Alternatively, could just drop Tar Creeper, Mark of Yasiraj, that if they wanted. You won't get the value, of course, from the card draw.
But you'll gain a whole bunch of health, yeah. You'll do a whole bunch of damage to these opposing minions.
Instead, they split the difference, and they're actually just going to build as much of a board as possible.
Which might end badly for them with this Arcanite Reaper. A card that Russia will know, obviously, is in the Pirate decks. It's in every Pirate deck. The 5 health is a bit of a bogey number for the Russians here.
Do they need to Arcanite Reaper? Could you South Sea Captain and upgrade now?
You definitely could.
And then you can trade off everything, and you can keep both of your captains alive. That seems quite nice.
Certainly does, and you've got 8 on the board and you're threatening 10 with the Reaper over 2 turns. Might be alright. One of the reasons I think PNC has got so good so quickly at Hearthstone is what you can see now. He knows full well, and I don't mind saying it on air, he's the best player on this team by a mile. He is the star player. But he is more than happy to communicate with his team for the entirety of the turn to make sure that they are, you know, haven't seen anything he's missed, except he has got no ego at all in that regard. He's got an ego. If you ask him if he's going to win a tournament, he'll say, yes, I'm going to win the tournament. But in terms of team play, he uses his team to the maximum he can.
So the route of the Arcanite Reaper was the decision made. I think either way were relatively similar. This way, they've got the option of buffing up the captain next turn if the trade is going to be more significant. So I can understand that, and yeah, upgrading the Reaper is always going to be a good thing as well. Get more value out of it than just upgrading the N'Zoth's first mate.
Okay, and this is going to work out okay for them. I think PNC is expecting another buff, but he's going to be okay when he sees this, I feel. They can clear this board. They're going to be on such a low health total, but they can clear this board. And their armor's worth more than Russia's armor. It's kind of the same, right? Because one removes one. And
2 off lethal. for Argentina here. So they will just, I would have thought, upgrade, get rid of this fledgling.
Yeah.
You know, there's no way in hell you are going to let that survive.
Doesn't look likely, right? And just a case now whether they want to play the captain and hero power, which seems entirely sensible. Also sets up lethal, so you might as well trade. And you get the 2 armor just in case of some strange tech. The days of waiting for 14 to hit you in the face are thankfully long since departed, though.
And just with the fledgling off the top, it means that Russia have no way of getting back into this game, and PNC is going to be able to secure this one for Argentina. So a nice start for them in the series. As we mentioned earlier, if they manage to win this whole series, they are definitely through to the second stage.
Yeah, 1-0 lead, and PNC looks pretty happy. They worked that out well from the start. Not too many decisions, but plenty of pitfalls they could have fallen into.
Yeah, very good trading decisions, actually. And as we saw, they were very thought out. A lot of conversation was had, no rushed decisions. And in the end, it does work out that PNC is able to get this first victory. And he'll be feeling good. He'll be feeling confident. As you said, one of the best, if not the best players on this team. So for him to set the precedent for the rest of his team and say, look, I've done my job. Now I can sit behind and help you guys get your job done as well. Moving into the second game for Russia now. Who else but to try and get things back on track than the man himself, Pavel?
Just the man himself, arguably the best player in the world. Certainly has the results to back that up if he tries to claim it. I'm not going to fight him. He looks scary.
I mean, Pavel is a very serious man. He loves his Hearthstone, and he also is very clear about how he feels about certain situations. He sometimes just outright says, I think I am the better player, and I'm going to win this game, but he's going up against Ildemir, and it's going to be Paladin versus Warrior. Any initial thoughts from yourself?
I think that Ildemir has got enough experience to have a go at this. He picks up more HCT points than you would imagine. He's 7, I think, in Winter, which is a middling amount, but he's played on the Championship Tour playoffs before. A guy not to be underestimated by any means, but Pavel, he's kind of Pavel.
Yeah, he is Pavel. And does intimidation come into factor here at all, do you think? I'm playing against a world champion. Is that even anything?
If you're sat opposite them at a big LAN event, then it may well do. But if you've got your team behind you saying, it's just Pavel, don't worry about it, you're probably okay until you finish. And they're going to tell your mates you beat Pavel on your own.
I beat Pavel on ladder once.
Did you?
Yeah.
Wow.
But actually, I think it might have just been a replica. I'm sure there's several people that rename themselves Pavel. And
yeah, he must admit, he didn't tweet anything about losing to Gaskin.
Why wouldn't he? I mean, I'm obviously such a popular Hearthstone
To Dan
streamer.
Gaskin, it was the day he beat Pavel, but to Pavel, it was Thursday.
It was just... it was just he had Cocoa Pops that morning. That was the most important part of his day. He is a world champion. He will want to get this back on track for Russia. And it's going to be Warrior versus Paladin then. If we are going to see the same theme that's developed, especially today, then perhaps we're going to see the aggressive. We're going to see maybe Pirate Warrior coming out of Pavel. But from what we know of Pavel as a world champion, I mean, do you think he naturally leans towards Quest or aggro, judging from his previous performances?
Pavel picks the lineup Pavel thinks is the best on the day, to be honest, I think. He's just had a bit of an accident on the playoffs this season. He went 0-2 this time around, so he'll be looking to fix that, as will all of Russia, obviously, in a just missing out. So I think Russians have got a point to prove that, I mean, they've had one fairly good tournament, fairly good being a disaster by their standards, and yeah, I think they'll have a point to prove and just want to get out there. I think they'll pick the decks that they think are the ones that are going to win. Yeah,
and it's always a hard one to call. Yeah, but it's a completely right answer, though, because it is just so hard to call at the moment between Quest Warrior and Aggro Pirate Warrior, to be honest. I mean, I don't even know what I prefer to play personally. God knows what these guys want to play in a tournament setting. I think it's an easier decision to make if it's Conquest, for example. But of course, this format isn't Conquest. It's just blind picks. You don't know what you're going to be going up against. So you have to look at the statistics behind it. You need to think, what is the best in the meta right now? If you had to go off, statistically best in the meta right now, what would you go for, Neil?
I think I'd go against the grain. I'd like the Pirate Warrior. I think, though, we've just seen how powerful Quest Warrior is across the whole of the NA preliminaries. So the rest of the world is probably telling me it should be Quest Warrior right now. But I like a man of my own thoughts, and I think it's going to be Pirates.
It might be. On the other side, we have Paladin. We spoke in the interview previous in the game between Belgium and France. We asked him about his Paladin deck that he had built. He said he'd put a lot more 1-drops into the deck. The Grimescale Chum has come back into effect, trying to get that more aggressive Murloc package back in, which did kind of fall out of favour over the last maybe couple of weeks. We've seen it become a bit more control heavy. Why do you think that is? Why has it become so control heavy as of late?
I think just reaction to the meta. The meta was very aggressive in Europe for the most part, and people wanted to slow that down. They wanted to react to anyone who might copy the European decks, and then it slows down, and then people go, oh, that looks quite good actually. And it's just this natural sort of cyclic thing that metas do, is you've got to wait till it gets to one point before you can counter it with the next.
Yeah, naturally you just want to try and fit in what you can, but it looks like we are going to have the Pirate Warrior, and it does look like there is some early game threat as well from Ildimer and Argentina, but it also has that late game, so it's perhaps more of a mid-range Paladin. Captain Greenskin, though, something that we've seen pop up a couple of times in the global games already. It does seem like a decent inclusion. It can work out really well.
Yeah, I don't see any reason not to play Greenskin. I mean, it's just personal taste at this point. If you want to play a Spellbreaker at that point, you can do that as well. Just depends what you think you're going to run into. Greenskin, a very aggressive option, of course.
It is, but speaking of aggressive options, look at this opening hand from Argentina. All their early game, exactly what they would have wanted. Does have the option, though, Tidecaller or Inquisitor. Depends what you're scared of. The 1-3 might actually be more likely to survive than the 1-2. Of course, you know the charge effects that are possible from the Pirate Warrior. If it is a Pirate Warrior, they have no idea at the moment.
They do have no idea. Or do they have no idea? I think the Greenskin may have been the left-hand card.
Ah, yeah, you're correct.
They would have seen it. Know it's, oh, no, they wouldn't have seen it. Yeah, they've seen it now. They didn't see it when they mulligan, of course, because everyone mulligans at the same time. So they know it isn't the quest, and therefore they know it is almost certainly the Pirates, unless Russia have brought some technology to a random game straight after the HCT weekend, which would be the most bizarre thing in history. And so, yeah, they know what they're up against now. And for the Murloc deck, it's about survival. If they can somehow fend off the opening exchanges, they can win this. But again, with the more aggressive decks, the more aggressive you go, the more likely you are to win in the mirrors.
Absolutely. You just want to... It becomes a race somewhat sometimes. And now the decision for Pavel is... Do I end Zoth's first mate? I get a weapon. I get 2 1-1s on board. I then have the possibility of coining out the cultist the following turn if one of those pirates survives. Or am I scared of this 1-3? Am I scared of Rockpool Hunter coming out?
Rockpool Hunter is the big problem if you're Russia here. Like, you've got the option to just get this War Axe up and running, and you can use it again next turn, so you're on Zoth's first mate's not too cluttery. And to decide that, you've got to know how many 1-drops are in your deck and the chances of picking them up. And they decide we do not want to lose to this.
It is funny, though. I mean, I spoke about the early game package of the Murloc Paladin that everyone's putting in. Rockpool Hunter I have seen disappear. It has been taken out by quite a few players as well. Whether we'll see it in Ildimer's deck, that will remain to be seen, but regardless, Russia seeing that as too much of an intimidation factor and using that War Axe accordingly.
Now it's Argentina's turn to read into the situation. So either our opponents don't have a 1-drop or they have a deck hand that they want to surprise us with next turn, which means that to go Tidecaller into Inquisitor looks the obvious thing, but it's a bit of a blowout if they do have that deck hand.
Yeah, that's the only worry, really. Well, I suppose it's not the only worry, but it is one of their many concerns. You do have a lot of concerns in general when you're going up against Pirate Warrior.
Yeah, and I think they've decided that you've got to go with a sensible play. If they've got it at this point, and that's where they're going to go with it. And there is no deck hand at the moment.
Ooh, upgrade coming through. Nice.
You might not want to do it in that order.
I don't want to do it. Get steady, steady on, buddy.
Pavel having a little... The closest like comes to having a bit of a laugh.
Oh, yeah, I forgot I'm a world champion. I shouldn't do stuff like that. Whoops. Silly me. I can imagine the rest of the Russian team like, wait.
Yeah, don't do that. We'll never call you champion again.
They just call him champ every time. Hey, champ. What's up, champ?
Hey, champ, yeah. How's your 1-drops, champ?
How's your 1-drops, champ? There's the Rockpool Hunter.
Yeah, I think with this many 1-drops, it makes a lot of sense to have a follow-up on turn 2. One of the reasons to drop the card would be if you don't get your 1-drop out very often. But if you've got loads of 1-drops, that's fine.
Yeah, usually if the Rockball Hunters drop, then the 1-drops are as well. You're completely right. Eye for an Eye, Noble Sack, or Redemption. I guess Redemption and Noble Sack can do a similar thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just manage to negate some of that damage that's coming to your face.
Yeah, it's really... And also keep the board. They both do almost the same exact thing in keeping the board. The Noble Sacrifice protects a minion. The Redemption brings it back to life. Not a great deal in it. So working out if they can Redemption something much further down the line. But they're just going to play it immediately. Yeah, here we go. And... Of course, they don't know, Russia don't know which one it is, so Russia have to just tiptoe around this. And this is going to enable Argentina to keep hold of the board.
Russia do have the fantastic turn 3 of Cultist, though. I mean, actually, those are pretty good decisions, Berserker or Cultist. Both have their own advantages in their own right, but Cultist just looks incredibly valuable right now, to be honest.
Right, and also it doesn't get abused by Repentant, whereas your Berserker's kind of... It's not your win condition by any means. The fact you've got a whole bunch of stuff that slaps people about is your win condition, but the Berserker's one card that can just single-handedly win the game without any of the others. And so I think we'll see the Cultist come down here, just because it's not so much of a Repentance problem.
And that's probably the easier decision of this turn as well. It's when it gets to how you're going to attack, because it's always an annoying situation where you don't know what the secret is of your opponent. Are you playing against Noble Sack? Do you have to attack first with your face? Do you attack first with the 1-1?
Right.
What are we looking at here? I mean, naturally, I think I'd trade in with the 1-1 to the 3-1 and then use my face afterwards to see what happens.
Yeah, if you're doing it this way, if you wanted to play the Berserker, you could use your face first, and then your Berserker gets buffed by more if it's like Noble Sacrifice, because then you can play the Berserker. Quite a lot to reason through logically there.
Pavel, did he get the attack off in time? Yes, he did, and does take out Tidecaller instead of the Hydrologist, just because of the fear of that beefing up and being too large.
I think this weapon might just be out of sight, you know. Like, you can mess around with your Peacekeepers and your Rockpool Hunters as much as you like right now. This weapon's got 4 durability at the moment. It's going to have 5 after Greenskin comes down. Naga's going to buff it up as well. I think this weapon might just do it alone.
Yeah, it goes from it goes to a 4-4 next turn, and then followed up by the Greenskin is just huge. We were saying how the Greenskin inclusion is an interesting one. In this situation, it's just perfect.
Yeah, and I think Argentina realised that we're not winning much here by trading. This weapon's going to do us. Oh my goodness.
Wow. To rub even more salt in the wounds, they do have the option of Corsair and, well, Naga Corsair and Dread Corsair if they wanted. Instead, they were actually opting to play the Frothing Berserker. They value the Frothing Berserker as more of an impactful minion. The fact it can hide behind a taunt as well as the trades means it is a very huge threat that Argentina need to somehow deal with.
And it's going to be the old, sad way of dealing with it.
Yeah.
Nobody likes.
It's so awkward because you're like, okay, I make it a 1-4 again, and then it's like, oh, it just becomes bigger again.
Just calm down this very angry Berserker, but he's still angry.
You give him a little bit of Cowpole, some medicine, he's happy again. But then he gets angry.
You won't like him when he's angry.
He would not like him.
You really wouldn't like him. He's just a froth all over you, and it's pretty disgusting, to be honest.
Sounds awful.
It is. It's not
something I don't even want to consider. And there we go. Even more damage now for Russia. Such a good position. I'm struggling to see a way back in for Argentina here. What trades do you make? I guess you just trade and keep the taunt alive and also just buff up this Berserker.
I don't think he's listened, right? He's been told to follow the rules, and he's just waited until the guys left the room, and then just proceeded to break them all again. Yeah, and that, I believe, is set up lethal. Yeah. It might be one off.
Well, Stonehill Defender will certainly get in the way of it, but the Stonehill Defender actually might help generate some form of lethal.
Right. There's no 3-drop there, kids.
There isn't. Such a frustrating situation for Argentina. It always is against Pirate Warrior, but I guess they're getting a little bit of their own back now, Russia, after falling to a Pirate Warrior themselves.
So it looks like Pirate Warrior is the deck of the day. In this match at least.
Pirate Warrior is always the deck of the day.
Is it?
Yeah, every day. There's another Dread Corsair as well.
I guess the only bits and pieces they can even consider here is, do we play around Equality Consecration, even though there's like... you know it's not in their deck, and then it just comes to the point of, well, it doesn't matter if it is or it's not, we just play around it because we can. They're just going to make sure they're not throwing away a win here if they don't play the Dread Corsair. Hence, any sort of communication if you're wondering why these guys sometimes take longer than you might on ladder.
You talking to me directly?
Yes.
Or, oh, okay. Thanks.
I've seen you play on ladder.
And I'm just like, bam, bam, bam.
Play like 10 games at the same time. I'm still on turn 4, having a bit of a think.
Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. I like to get my games done and dusted at the bus stop. Actually, I very rarely get on buses, so I don't even know why I said that.
You don't get on buses?
No, I'm more of a driving man.
Okay, you're driving me nuts, so it makes a lot of sense. Haha! Yep, victory is yours, world champion Pavel. What a surprise.
Yep, Pavel managing to tie it up 1-1 gets Russia right back into the swing of things, exactly what they needed. Because if they do lose this one, they suddenly fall to that middle of the group with the rest, with New Zealand, Australia, Austria, all with the chance, all pipping at their heels, hoping that they can take that third spot.
Yeah, important times. I just noticed Pavel there had all these little trophies, the back right. Don't know if that's some sort of intimidation. Surely he doesn't need to show off. Pavel, you're too good already, don't you?
You're already a world champ, Pavel. Come on. You already beat Dan Gaskin on ladder once.
I mean, what more do you need to do in life?
What more do you need? Okay, game number 3 then. Snail versus Stan. We're going to see Druid versus Paladin. Now, if Pavel wasn't a good enough player, we've got Stanadachi as well. Also, a massive player in the Russian scene.
Yeah, just a bit of a big name, winning the championships last season, of course. Didn't do that well again this time around, but he won't be missing for long. It was actually Stan that went 0-2. I think it was Pavel that didn't qualify. He took a couple of months a little bit light because he had so many tournaments. And I think it was Stan that went 0-2, but it all holds true anyway. Nice
position to be in when you've got all those tournaments to play in, I guess.
Yeah. Not
just flying around the world, winning a championship here and there. It's a nice spot for Pavel.
Yeah.
But now he can sit behind his teammates and help Stanadachi win against Snail. Now, Snail is a man that has also done pretty well. I mean, I think he got, was it top 6 Winter 2016 of the Americas? So he's been up there again with the Copper Cups. He's always around and up there with the rest of his teammates as well. They just have a fantastic kind of impact on their community in general.
Yeah, and to the community, he did get to that HCT finals as a Tavern hero, which means he went through his local community first, was elected the champion by winning. That's how you get elected in Hearthstone. And then went all the way through the bracket to, I think, 7 wins and 1 loss, take himself to the top 6. Pretty good going.
It's always nice, especially when you qualify for a tournament in that situation, when you've grinded, absolutely, you've beaten off so many oppositions, and you've got to the point where you feel like you deserve some form of achievement.
Right.
So he got there in the end, and it was well-deserved. Paladin versus Druid, then third game of the day. It's going to be the Jade Druid against the Murloc Paladin.
Jade Druid against Murloc Paladin is not much fun at all for the Druid. Murloc Paladin, especially if he can get a war leader, just like stomps all over them. But of course, in the mulligan phase, Russia not quite sure what to do. So we might seem to keep this consecration.
Why do you think that? Why do you think you keep the cons?
Living mana.
Ah, okay, just in case they're facing... I see where you're going.
They've got a good 1-2, there's stuff they can do, and they're likely to draw more things to do by turn 3 anyway, so they can have that consecration in their back pocket if they want to.
Is an option to coin out Wrath if they are worried about the 1-2 wombo combo of Rockpool Hunter. Similarly to what we saw in the previous game where he coined out the War Axe, I guess this is quite a similar situation.
Yeah, I mean, you could innovate out the Blossom as well and then coin out the Idol. That would leave you with some stuff on the board, a bit of mana, but it'll leave you nothing to do for 2 or 3 turns. Going to be a long, thoughtful process, a bit of a change of pace for Snail.
How important are the Feral Rages as well for the Jade Druid here? Is having them on that turn 3 to actually use to get rid of some of the board of Russia rather than necessarily the armor?
Yeah, I mean, the Wrath is really important to get rid, and Feral Rage would be just as important to get rid of a potential war leader. And this is the play that makes the most sense, by the way. Trying to hold on to the coin, I think. They're not sure, because it challenges the board so nicely, but the Auctioneer is then just sitting there forever.
What do you mean by coining out a Jade Idol?
Right.
I don't know if I liked it.
There's no hurry, right? Next turn you've got Jade Idol and Wrath anyway.
Yeah. I think it would have been a little bit overkill.
It would.
You get the value from the Rockpool Hunter now for Russia. I think this is just a consideration of do we trade or do we go face. I'm trying to think of why it really makes a difference. I think just trading seems better than going face.
I agree. I think they mainly spent that time, because Stan is not the world's slowest player. I think they mainly spent that time crying about their hand, to be honest.
Well, it would have been good against Living Mana, as you said.
Whenever I keep my consecration, I draw the other one.
You sound like me.
Well, that was my
Stop
impression.
Stop replicating my thoughts and my hopes and dreams.
All right, so now a more sensible, difficult decision here for Snail. One option is to coin out the Jade Spirit, which actually challenges the board quite nicely. But the other option is just to take some damage off it immediately with his Wrath. The downside of this play, in theory, would be if your opponents then just play a Murloc War Leader.
Yeah, the War Leader is what you're scared about. Does have the Jade Idol to try and stabilize this board somewhat. Nothing of impact drawn for Stan for this turn, but it does mean the following one, if Snail doesn't deal with both of these Murlocs, you are going to get value out of that Gentle Megasaur. Gentle Megasaur, of course, such a disgusting card, is really why Murloc Paladin has been so successful.
Look at his lovely face. How can you call him disgusting?
He's filthy.
Look at him. He's just chomping away on some greens.
So Poisonous would allow them to trade with both minions. Seems pretty good.
Yeah, 5-4 versus nothing. This is where you want that Feral, but actually coin into Aya gives you some sort of chance of taking over the board, but now things get messy.
They do. Opting to coin out the Aya rather than saving that coin for the Auctioneer. They do have at least a Nourish to refill their hand next turn. I think that's what you mean by it getting messy.
Yeah, Nourish really made that decision easier in terms of the Auctioneer. The only question was, can you give up fighting for the board for one turn to Nourish? And straight away they just say, nope, we want to fight for this board. Look how good it is.
Yeah, and we can't see anything plopped onto the board by Russia that's too impactful either. Yes, okay, they've got another Inquisitor, so it means they can get 2 of those little Murloc dudes that they're going to have to trade.
One of the hard things about this matchup for the Druid is you feel like you've stabilized. You get into this position and you're like, oh, this is actually really good now with the Innovate, having said that. But you get into this position, you feel like you've stabilized, and then it just goes Tyrion into Spike Steed and Tyrion. These cards then give the Paladin this really annoying second wind that's actually also hard to deal with. However, you're normally on about 16 or 18 when they do that second wind. Snail's on 30.
He is. Snail just slowly crawling along here. Happy with his life total. Does have the option of going Auctioneer into Innovate, as you said. Then the follow-up of just Hero Power if he wants to take out one of these 1/1s. If, for example, he's worried about another Megasaur. But as you said, just the ability to refill from the Paladin. I mean, Stonehill Defender is something that can get you a second Tyrion, for example.
Right.
So a lot of ability to get back into a matchup, even when you think they're down and out.
And that is why Snail is just trading off everything on the board for as long as he can here to make sure that as little accidents as possible can happen. Ragnarok's Light Nord not 100% played in Murloc Paladin. It is in the more slow versions a lot of the time. But we have seen versions with Ragnaros and with the Curator occasionally now.
Yeah, this was the discussion that I was having earlier with Falcone about where Murloc Paladin is at the moment, because people are still trying to find the best variant. Is it aggro? Is it control? It's kind of meeting in the middle, and it really depends on how the player feels and how they play themselves rather than the deck necessarily.
Yeah, Finger was the word I was groping for there, because they all play Curator. Yeah, Finger is sometimes played. It was in Inivan's deck's lineup for HCT with Ragnaros, but in the normal Murloc deck. You're right, it's just a weird discussion to have, because it's a good discussion to have, because
it's a similar place to where Mage is, I would say. Maybe not as crazy as where Mage is at the moment, and Mage is in a slightly more sporadic place. However, the Paladin is starting to settle. There's just a few changes here and there that people are moving around depending on preference, but look how juicy this is for Snail. He was able to keep his Auctioneer alive and then swipe into Wrath. It's just allowed him to continue this board stabilization. And that turn 9 of Fandral into Nourish is also going to be equally pleasant for him.
Yeah, Fandral into Nourish used to just be a straight-up win condition at one point, but now it's a little bit less strong than it was, but still something, like you say, pretty juicy for Snail. But again, look at the sustain that this Murloc deck has got. I mean, anybody else would have just given up against Jade Druid by now and just, you know, moved on with their lives, taking their home with them.
Snails do that.
Yeah, they do.
Speaking of, I mean, he can create a bit of a shell now. Just putting a taunt in front of him. Make this very difficult for Russia to get through. We do have Tyrion as a possibility to come onto the board, which I think will be slammed down relatively quickly. Alternatives, Equality Consecrate, he has held that one back, but I imagine that is more of a panic button situation now.
Yeah, and we've seen Russia, one of the things that have been notable about their play, in terms of their style, not necessarily their speed throughout this tournament, is they are the team that are most likely to just take their time with their cards. Equality Consecration, it's good now, but it's better against a 7-7 and an 8-8, so they will try and get every last bit of value out of this.
Do you think the mulligan from Russia has kind of put them in this sticky situation?
Yeah, I mean, that Consecration, drawing into another Consecration, I think you've hit the nail on the head there.
Happens by accident a lot, actually, when I hit snails on the head. Usually when I'm just walking down the high street.
Oh, that's crushing, man.
It is, absolutely. I was shell-shocked, to be honest, as we do see the trade come in from Snail, and this board is looking monumentous, to be honest. Might have to be Equality Consecration just to survive here.
Yeah, and this is where normally the Druid is on a slightly lower health total and they start scrambling, having to Feral Rage or Earthen Scales to fill back up their armor, which means they develop the board less than they would like. But in this particular game, actually, Russia have not done enough damage early on, although that is going to change now with these Murlocs and the War Leader.
But Primordial Drake will just put a stop to any aggression coming out of Russia. May just be a nice quick easy turn. You could start it off with a Wild Growth first if you would like. However, you may want to keep Wild Growth with the Auctioneer if you would rather just Hero Power for a little bit of extra armor and extra damage, to be honest. Yeah,
nice problems to have. You might Wild Growth here just to get the excess mana and not play it.
Okay, yeah.
And then Primordial Drake. If you decide that your turn actually is just Primordial Drake, you might just not worry about the one armor, just Wild Growth ready for Auctioneer next turn.
Yeah, there's no way that the Hero Power actually sets up for lethal either. You can set him down to a level, does have the Swipe and the Drake and a Hero Power next turn, but that's only 9.
Yeah, so we'll see they keep this excess mana now, which means that next turn will be silly, or not necessarily next turn, any turn where something bad happens, they need to draw 2 cards. I don't think anything bad is going to happen in the short term here, though.
Stan was very quick to put the Ragnaros on the board, and I think someone else was like, wait, we need to think about this.
wait,
there are other alternatives. What card did you draw?
Yeah, exactly. What card did you draw, Stan? Let us have a go. We want to play too. This is a team tournament.
Tarim is going to be a good way to stabilize ever so slightly. That Feral Rage would have actually changed things if there wasn't any healing from Russia, so extremely important that they did go for that play.
And this is another, I mean, Argentina's still in a really nice spot, but again, you can see how difficult this would be if they'd taken a bit more damage early. And it's only difficult now because they've got so many choices. They do have to get rid of this Ragnaros, obviously.
So do you start with Auctioneer, then excess mana, and then you've got the Swipe plus your Drake just to outright get rid of Ragnaros?
That's an option, or you could decide to go the other way and decide you're going to play the Jade Spirit this turn so your board is still strong after you've done the trading. That would be the decision.
I guess you could Jade Spirit, Jade Blossom, and Feral Rage if you wanted to take the 8. I don't really like it.
Yeah, I think you want to save that reload armor just because this deck is so full of sustain. See what they choose to do.
Yeah. As you said, just making more of a board presence rather than the draw with the Auctioneer. You're going to have the draw for the Auctioneer in the following turns anyway, when you really need to search for the answers. Just putting a big old 7-7 on the board makes it awkward for your opposition. We can see that there is a nice way to deal with it, though.
So this build is a build that I have seen now, is the Finger with the Ragnaros. This is a seemingly standard-ish build. Like you say, there is a way to deal with it. It can get Tarimated.
Oh, I like that.
The Tarimator.
Yeah.
It's a good movie.
I can't unthink it anymore.
I can't unthink it. The only question now is, do you want to... Oh, what is the question now?
So, you either just take out the 2-3, then you Hero Power and play Terran, and you put a 3-3 on the board that's just there. Alternatively, you what?
War Leader, Finger, make a little Murloc, set up for a bigger Tarim next turn, and prepare to eat a bunch of damage. And hope your opponent doesn't have 8 to face plus their hero power, which Druid often does.
I think I prefer Tarim this turn. I think hero power, trade off the 2/3 first can work, but looks like Russia want to go down the line of, we think we are still alive, we don't think you're going to have enough damage. We've seen both swipes, so we think we're in a comfortable enough position that we don't need to worry right now.
So double Feral Rage would have been lethal there. With hero power.
Yep.
And that was what the discussion was. And I think Stan pointed to himself there, which possibly means, look, it's on me. I'm going to call it. They haven't got it.
So is there any way that Auctioneer can start searching for lethal? Auctioneer plus mana searches as well. You've only got 4 left. You'd need exactly Innovate into second Feral Rage to be able to win this game.
You'd
still be one off.
I know you wouldn't,
unless you've got the Earthen Scales, and then you'd be all right.
So
but
Innovate into Feral Rage would win the game.
But it doesn't happen. Instead, they just get more tools. The Ooze actually pretty big here. I mean, you can nicely deal with this Ashbringer.
Yeah, and obviously the armor gain is relevant in this game, where you can see even if your opponent has the nuts, which they kind of do, then you'll just be able to grind them out. There is the Feral Rage, just a little bit late. So what happens when you rage, you end up being late.
So now for Stan, this is a Tarim turn, of course. You Tarim first. Well, no, actually, you play some things first, I guess.
It's sort of awkward, right? You play a dude, then you Tarim, and then you buff the Finger with the Rockpool Hunter.
So that the Finger survives, and then it draws more.
But then, if you do it that way, you would rather play the Tarim and the War Leader.
Yeah, so you could either War Leader first, then trade in with Finger, and then Tarim after Finger draws 2 Murlocs.
It's really messy, and even Stan's sort of like, hang on, there's 3 different ways to do this, which one do we want to go with? But luckily, the whole of the best players in the world seem to be on this team.
So trading in first, yeah, I think that makes sense, because you never know what you're going to get from the Finger when you have this kind of package. Another War Leader is really big.
Life's just a box of Murlocs.
You never know what you're going to get until you get to the middle.
Couldn't resist, could you?
You set it up for me.
I did.
They can take out the Auctioneer, and they put a taunt in the way. There's no way for Snail to get rid of this taunt and put enough damage to face either.
At any point in this game, did you think that the Druid might win? Because I did.
I thought the Druid was in a good position, and then suddenly Sunkeeper Tarim, the Tariminator, as you called him, has just swung this back in the Paladin's favor. It's just sustaining now for Argentina. They were looking pretty. They were thinking, okay, we've got double Feral Rage and Hero Power as a possible lethal if no taunts come out. But now they might have to use these Feral Rages as armor just to stay alive.
Which is ridiculous, and that equality consecration that was held onto helped a little bit as well. All the ordering from Russia has been on point, I believe. Interesting about the consecration, keeping the opening hand, that seemed to have messed them up. It would have been fantastic if they'd been living mana, though, let's face it. But there was not. But that shows how good a keep it was. They drew like really badly, and they still found themselves in this position later on.
So there is a lot of damage that can come on down from Stanidaci here. He can actually trade in one of his 5/1s first, if he would like, and then he can play the War Leader, or just play the War Leader. He doesn't even have to trade anymore because the board has been cleared, and that should be enough damage. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 17, 19, yeah!
25 is bigger than 24, and 2 is bigger than 1, which means that Russia are going to be in the lead as they wait for the concede. Don Snail, bottom right, buddy.
A nice amount of damage coming through. Stanidaci somehow pulling that one out of the bag, and actually that big decision to play that Finger to say, I think we are still alive. We've seen both of the swipes. Of course, if there was the Innovate into Feral Rage, it would have been a very particular order from the draw of the Auctioneer, but there was a possibility. So a big call coming from Stanidaci. You saw him kind of pointing to himself, this one's on me if we lose, but it could be on him for winning that one.
Yeah, absolutely great call there. And that's the meme, the percentage-based player, that is exactly what they mean. Look, we've seen all these cards that kill us. There can't be many left. Well, we know there aren't many left. If they've got them, they've got them. They shouldn't have them. They didn't have them. Game 1.
Potentially everyone else in the group now with their heads in their hands. They do not want Russia to win this because Russia would be up to 3-1 with Argentina. It makes things even more difficult for the rest of the group to try and qualify. We now go into Game 4. Now, Gaiden versus Silvername. As you touched upon earlier, Neil, Silvername's such a massive player throughout the Russian community. A very big following.
Yeah, absolutely gigantic. Literally every time he plays, chat goes mental. I'm sure you're going crazy right now. Hi, chat. How are you going? Now, Gaiden, we mustn't overlook, though. He has played every single HCT playoffs. Despite the fact that most people won't even know who he is, he's played them all, and he plays them out as well. He's one of these guys that, if you're not doing very well in the Swiss, just going to keep playing and get my experience while I can. And that's a sign to me of a player who's going to end up being very high up.
So he's played everyone ever.
Like, there's been 5 and he's played them all.
Wow, and I think his biggest success is top 64 2017 winter, I think, if I remember correctly.
He hasn't got any sort of massive pedigree results. But
he's been there.
He's getting all these HCT points every single season to get into that sort of circle of really good players, and just hasn't managed to. I mean, there aren't that many tournaments out there apart from the Copa America in South America, and so he's trying to get that breakout performance through the HCT, and it'll happen in the end, especially if he keeps hanging around with people like Snail and PNC.
I mean, we say nothing massive, but actually top 64 in the Americas in the winter
right?
is actually a really big achievement, especially when he's just trying to go up that ladder. As you say, I think we are going to be seeing more of him. If he just keeps entering, he's going to get that one tournament eventually.
Yeah, and he's not hopeless or anything. He's got 9 wins in HCT competitions. So he's beaten 9 of his compatriot top 64 players, or top 1 to 8 last year, top 64 this year. The guy can play Hearthstone. He's just overlooked because sometimes it's a sea of names, and unless you do all the stats and have a look, you don't see that some of the names are actually coming up time and time again. Somewhere in the middle of the pack, it's easy to overlook.
Rogue versus Rogue is going to be the next game, and potentially the last one if Russia are able to take it. Are we going to see a Quest Rogue mirror like we saw earlier on today, or are we going to see a little bit of a spanner in the works? No spanners today. It is just going to be an outright Quest Rogue off, Neil.
Quest Rogue off. We've seen one already, and that was an interesting match. That seemed to come down to who doesn't cast the Vanish.
Yeah, it just came down to Vanishes. It was 2 Vanishes that actually won the game in the end. The patches into Vanish into patches sometimes can be a surprise factor. The old Vanish.
It looked a little bit like who forces the other guy to have to vanish away the board.
Yep.
And then you keep your Vanish for a rainy day, and you save all the mana associated with it.
So Mulligan's always a tricky situation when you're playing Quest Rogue. I think in general, Quest Rogue has a bad press for being easy to play, but there are a lot more decisions that come around that you wouldn't necessarily know if you are new to Hearthstone. You are looking really for those bounce back effects though, aren't you, Neil?
You are, and one interesting decision, even before we start the game here, is that Russia are still playing Swashbuckler. The problem with Swashbuckler is that it pulls patches out of your deck. Well, that's not normally a problem. Normally you want to pull patches out of your deck, but patches is so much better when it's a 5-5.
Who'd have thought?
Oddly enough, that a 1-1 charge minion is better than a 5-5 charge minion. No, I can't say words.
We know what you meant.
Thank you.
Don't worry. Both quests, of course, being played early on. I think we were expecting that, Neil, but you're completely right. The Swashbuckler is a possible next turn from Russia. They also have Novice Engineer if they would like. But now Argentina, they're the ones who get to set the pace here. Opting not to play the Novice Engineer, they want to have a little look about their hand first, see what options they've got before they commit to anything to the board.
Igneous Elemental is a big deal as well. In 2 ways. Obviously, first of all, you can complete the quest with it, but that's not very likely in the mirror match. But after the quest is complete, it's a 5-5 that needs to be killed that gives you 2 more 5-5s.
It's not likely in the mirror match. It was more likely when rogues were running backstabs.
Right.
That was a thing in Quest Rogue, and actually it was at the similar time to when Swashbuckler was in Quest Rogue as well. So maybe we'll see a backstab here that could help get rid of that Elemental. I'm of course talking about backstabbing your own minion to get it off the board, because Elemental can just be so sticky in this mirror matchup.
Also, we're playing a mirror matchup with a Swashbuckler in the deck, which means there's a really good chance that Russia pick up cards that actually either help their deck, or things like backstabs or eviscerates that help slow down the opponent, help it's just really nice.
Yeah, it was a conversation that was had. Is Swashbuckler good in Quest Rogue? There were arguments for both sides. In the end, Swashbuckler fell out of favour because people found cards that they thought were more consistent. However, you're completely right. Swashbuckler does have that element of being able to draw something a little bit different that can outright just win you a game.
Yeah, and when it's a mirror, it's just going to draw you more rogue stuff. And you quite like rogue stuff in a rogue mirror.
It's a lot of rogue things.
Just for me.
Firefly being drawn might actually be the time for Argentina to decide we'd like to pull the trigger here. Now, you could bounce one of those back if you would like and say we think the likelihood of us being able to play several Fireflies is high here.
Yeah, sometimes you look to only play the Elemental, but that's more if you've got an Igneous Elemental with it. With a Firefly in a mirror, like we said earlier, the Igneous Elemental is not likely to die, so you probably just bounce back the actual Firefly itself.
It is crazy that in global games, when we have seen Quest Rogue come into play, that we haven't seen it be completed in like turn 4. Or like we haven't seen those crazy draws where Quest Rogue really gets its bad press, where everyone's saying it's so easy to play because you complete the quest on turn 4 and you win the game on turn 5. In the most recent games, we've seen mirrors that have gone a little bit further than expected.
Yeah, and we have seen Tar Creepers sneak into the deck, which slows it down a little. We've seen Stone Shapers sneak into the deck. But yeah, when I play against this deck on ladder, I'm dead by now. But I do think it's because a function of the teams making sure they're not too all in.
Yeah.
Some people on ladder will just go flat out all in, and if you haven't got Consecration, you're left scratching your head as to why they did it, for instance. Whereas in this, the players are actually good. And they sit there and go, well, actually, we don't want to lose all of our cards because that might lose us the game.
Exactly. Argentina could have taken that risk previously and said, we're going to play Firefly, we're going to bounce it back, and we hope we draw another bounce back in the next turn.
Right.
Instead, they're actually being more cautious about their play and said, we'd rather just draw some cards and have a little think, get a bigger picture before we start committing anything to board. It is Russia who are going to play that Igneous Elemental first, which can be so impactful. But Argentina do have that Glacial Shard to freeze it if they think it's going to get a little bit scary and get close to dying.
Are they doing nothing here? They're doing nothing. They've decided, look, the Bilefin's really good as a 5/5 generator later. The Flame Elemental, we're just messing around. If we put anything down to bounce it like the Gadget Sound, we're just helping Russia kill off their Igneous Elemental. The Glacial Shard's good at freezing 5/5s. Why do we want to freeze a 2/3? The preparation we need and the Stone Tusk Boar's a 5/5 with charge. Why do we want to play that? And so they just chilled. Just
chilling sometimes does help. Patience, really important factor. There's another Firefly as well. But with that second Novice Engineer being played, it does mean that Silvername's going to say, actually, we're going to toss that one back to our hand. We have a Vanish as a possibility of another bounce back if we have to use that at some point. And Neil, that's a Cold Light Oracle. Can you just talk me through that just for a second?
It draws 2 cards for each player.
It does draw 2 cards for each player.
They couldn't afford Mimic Pods.
Wow, I genuinely haven't seen that. Now, you may have seen that before, but I actually haven't seen Cold Light Oracle in Quest Rogue.
It snuck around in the very early days of this deck, and I've seen it once or twice. It's a very, very fringe card indeed, but it does help you with that little bit of refill. Obviously, in the mirror, all that happens is and this is why Cold Light Oracle isn't played in every deck in Hearthstone, your opponent gets first use of the cards if you don't wait until a lot later. And so it's kind of a waste, but they feel they're going to be able to use the cards now that they get from it, and they're going to do it straight away.
Yeah, because they get to burn their opposition cards as well by giving them the Flame Elementals from the Igneous Elemental. Just burning 1 Mimic Pod at the moment. No bounce back effects drawn from Russia, and it's going to be 1 more card burnt as well. So it may be an option just for Russia to put everything on the board, Fireflies, Flame Elementals, then they have the follow-up, the further turn of that Vanish. But then that's still risky, Neil, because your hand is just so full.
Yeah, and you want to make sure that, I mean, you don't mind burning cards for the large part, but you've got to empty it out.
Yeah, that's one of the ones they didn't want to burn.
Standard Archie will be having flashbacks because he recently had a bit of an accident with the quest in a tournament with a full hand. I'll let you work out for yourselves what might have happened there. Wasn't nice.
I think I've got an idea. We've seen it a couple of times in professional Hearthstone tournaments, actually, where that crystal core does just get burnt away. And maybe Argentina's saying that that's a good possibility. Could we put that in chance? Even put that thought in the opposition's head.
And is this because the Fireflies? You play the Firefly, and if you play too quickly, you think, oh, I've just played a card. No, you haven't, mate. You just haven't.
So they could, what, prep out Vanish here. They've already got 8 cards. So then they get that Novice Engineer back. They couldn't quite coin it out, though. So that wouldn't really work out. They wouldn't like that. So I think I just prefer playing lots of stuff from Russia.
Yeah, just emptying out some of the hand. It's almost like Argentina saying, you know what, we don't want to do the thinking, you work it out, because there's so many options here. And yeah, it looks like they're going to go with the elemental way of doing the quest. Key, of course, to be able to change direction. If you don't want to do it with the engineer because times have changed, do it with the elementals instead. This sets up, of course, for next turn having a load of 5/5s on the board as well.
Still no bounce backs for Argentina, though. Unfortunately for them.
No more bounce backs for Russia either.
Well, they do have the ferryman. Sorry, I'd actually missed that in the top left-hand corner.
Russia don't know. Oh, sorry, Argentina don't know that Russia aren't going to complete and make a load of 5/5s next turn. But as it stands, Russia only have the Vanish. It can be prepped into, of course, but then you wouldn't be able to play the quest.
Yeah, you're right.
So prep, Vanish, play back down all of the stuff you can play back down and have a good-looking board is probably where Russia are setting up. Argentina will know that's an option. There's so many cards in Russia's hand, so they need to plan how they're going to react to that. They've played a reactive game. They've obviously got an unusual game plan here.
I guess for Russia, if they get one of those bounce-back effects, then this is in a very advantageous position. And you've got, what, the Shadow Steps, you've got another Brewmaster in the deck as well, so there will be options for them.
Right, and this is, you know, Argentina reacting to the fact they could just lose next turn if they're not careful, and having to panic clear stuff up. He did get all the commands off there, so he has managed to level up the board.
That's a bounce back effect, Neil. So that means all you need to do is go face with one of these, bounce one back, play it again, and then you can prep out the Crystal Core if you would like.
You can do that, or you can Vanish, prep Vanish, but I think you keep the Vanish for emergencies. I like your play better, I think, although Vanish does, of course, clear up your opponent's board.
I wonder.
Swashbuckler to me.
Well, Swashbuckler does get patches out as well. You do have the mana to do everything still by playing Swashbuckler, so I guess why not start with that anyway to see what you draw and see what you get, because that might change your line of play. Always draw first is a sap, which actually might come in handy later. So now you Brewmaster back one of the elementals after you've attacked with it, and as we said, you can prep out the Crystal Core after playing it.
Yeah, and this is going to leave with an absolutely insane-looking board. Assuming that Silvername hasn't left it too late, but I'm sure he hasn't.
And he can trade accordingly and put potential lethal next turn on the board. And now Gaiden now will just be hoping for what? A Vanish, but even a Vanish is going to be a pretty sticky situation because you're giving them bounce back and you're giving them patches. No bounce back drawn though. So you're going to have to be mimic podding and looking for more here for Argentina.
See what they pick up here. Obviously, it's likely to be over. Shadow Step with Glacial Shards might be enough to buy some time. I'm not sure if they can do enough with it, though. How about Glacial Shadow Step with the Tide Hunter? The trouble is they need the quest as well.
Yeah, they can complete the quest with the boar here. But even completing it, they can only freeze one minion and trade with one minion. So they can just about keep themselves alive on board. But we can see a deckhand in there as well, which will allow us to get a little bit more damage. So opting instead to just nicely put down a taunt.
Yeah, the board's going to be okay for them, but they're all in, and Russia still have a handful of cards, including that sap, which may come in handy at some point. In terms of setting up lethals, but this is why you keep your biofins for so long. This is why they thought for so long on turn 4 and did nothing, because they envisaged this situation possibly being a little bit better than it is and making a whole bunch of 5/5 taunts.
Incredible use of the mana. This is one of those backstabs we were talking about as well. We could have Vanish be an option here, potentially, if they would like.
We've got to make sure there's just not a lethal, right?
I can't see one. They do have the deckhand possibility of a charge, but no, I don't think there is any lethal here. So it looks like because Argentina have just dumped their whole hand, Russia will be like, well, okay, we can just trade effectively now, put more stuff on the board, and then where do you go?
Yeah, well, how are you going to kill us from 20 unless you go Mimic Pod, and we've seen at least one of those already, or another Cold Light Oracle. Other than that, Argentina is just going to have nothing worth doing, and Russia will make sure that they trade the exact right amount to not die, which is probably everything.
I think you kill everything because why not? They've got nothing in their hand. You don't want to give them any chance back into this game.
Yeah.
You've got 10 power on board. You've also got Saps and Mimic Pods. Really good spot now for Russia. Argentina needs to be drawing something huge, but Brewmaster is not it. You may even be forced to just keep it in your hand, to be honest, Neil, in case you draw something like a Biofin.
That makes sense, actually, and just eat a minimum of 10, well, a minimum of 11, and more likely a whole lot more.
Or even something like a Firefly.
Tempting though it is to stem the tide with this 5-5, you never win if you do it that way, so... Oh.
That's a deckhand, so that can be 15. They'll Mimic Pod and see if they can find any lethal.
I mean, that wins the game. They'll play these, and that'll be the end of that.
Yep, they just put enough of a presence on the board. I mean, now Gaiden, in theory, could still draw a Vanish, which, in their eyes, keeps them alive. But, of course, we can see the second Vanish for Russia. It means even if that happened, they could just deckhand into Vanish, into deckhand. And the deckhand from Argentina is not going to be enough. So that means Russia are going to win this series 3-1, and they will find themselves at 3-1 in the group, joining Argentina at the top. So it means Argentina do not guarantee their qualification today. They're still in a good spot, Neil, but they will still have stuff to worry about.
Yeah, 3-2, and they've finished. They can't influence it anymore. They've got to sit and hope the results go their way. They're in a strong spot, but... We've said that about people before in games.
Yeah, they just need to hope that there are some losses elsewhere. We can get into the nitty-gritty when the group is up later, but here we have all the classes brought by both teams then. Russia, despite going 1-0 down, did fight back thanks to the early start from Pavel with the Warrior and then the Paladin and Rogue, which is too strong from Standard Archie and Silvername.
Yeah, and if you looked away, you probably thought they were 2-0 down, to be honest, because the Paladin game against the... Oh, so it looks like they're 2-1 down. The Paladin game against the Druid really looked like it was over, but Finger being teched in, we've seen it a few times now, just makes that Paladin deck have that little bit more sustain. Ragnaros did its job, Finger did its job. Just switching out 2 cards made a huge difference.
Yeah, Russia played that very strongly. I'm not entirely surprised. If I had to look at all of the rosters across Global Games, Russia, for me, is a very strong one. It is Sottle's pick for the tournament, which means it's a little bit like, do we want Russia to win?
Sottle sitting at home going, well, I've got to pick the best team.
Well, we'll have a little chat to Pavel then, previous world champion, my friend. How are you feeling after that victory, Pavel?
Nothing special, to be honest.
Nothing special.
Just another day in the office for you then, huh?
Yeah.
Just
another daily business.
Yeah.
Daily business. You're going to need a new table at this rate, aren't you, to put all your trophies on?
Yeah. Definitely need a bigger table for my trophies.
Would you like us to post you Neil, the Murloc? You can put that on your table as well if you like. No, he didn't.
What again?
No, it's all right. It doesn't matter. Regardless, you go into your final game then against New Zealand. How are you feeling about that matchup?
The result of this matchup is don't even matter for us. We qualify for next stage anyway, so maybe we will not even prepare before our next match.
Excellent. And how are you keeping up with the schedule at the moment? You're playing a lot of Hearthstone.
Today it was hard because today is the last day of the season, and I played all day ladder and slept only about 5 hours. And then I needed to wake up quickly and play my match on SGG. But yeah, it's still manageable.
The grind never stops for Pavel. Congratulations anyway, Pavel. It was a fantastic victory for you guys. Best of luck in the rest of the global games. I'm sure we'll be seeing you soon.
And we will win.
And you can win. Russia are a fantastic team, so best of luck with that one.
Thank you.
Pavel, man.
Did you know you were getting into that when you started?
Like, I knew that interview was a possibility. I knew he was going to be like the Pavel that he always is. So confident He knows exactly what he wants, and he just gets the job done.
Yeah, we won. I'm not surprised. Another day at the office. Gaskin beat you once, you don't even remember.
Oh, I should have mentioned it, shouldn't I? I didn't even bring it up. So Pavel seems to think that Russia have actually qualified. I will look at that.
He's thought that since the first week.
Yeah, I think he just doesn't look at score difference. He's like, no, we qualified, we're 3-1 up now. Who cares about anyone else? I think that actually there is still a chance that they might not qualify.
I'll let you maths that one.
Yeah,
I mathed it. So
I'll maths that one myself, but they are in a very good spot. In a very advantageous spot for sure as we look across some of the highlights. Now this was the game where we thought Russia were down and out. We thought they were going to get swept aside by the Jade Druid that was somewhat unfavourable. But this is why it's unfavourable, because the Murlocs can come back with a vengeance.
Yeah, that was a good call there from Stan. I believe it was his call that we're not going to die next turn. There were outs to die. Doesn't matter to him because he knew that the maths was on his side.
And then we had the Quest Rogue matchup to finish it off, and in the end, Silvername was just able to get too much of a board presence on the board that Argentina just couldn't fight up against. They couldn't keep up with the sheer amount of minions, turn after turn, so in the end, the person who won the quest won.
Yeah, they did hold off on turn 4, choosing to play a little reactively. It made a lot of sense to me at the time, but in hindsight, maybe that was a turn where they just gave up too much. Possible problem there.
Yeah, there was a couple of turns where they just passed, wasn't it? As you said, it just felt a little bit awkward for Argentina, but everything went right for Russia, and they now find themselves at 3-1 in the group. There were a lot of decisions to be made. Russia playing around all of their win conditions very successfully, knowing that they didn't need to rush into looking for a lethal opportunity too early.
Right.
They just had to control the board.
Yeah, and that final attack there was just a snail in the coffin.
Have you said that twice now?
No.
I think you have.
I haven't.
I think you have. Let's see how Group C is affected then by those results. Russia sitting up at the top there, 3-1 with a +5 game record. That's why they think they are through. I guess with them now having a better game record than Argentina, they are in a really good spot. But look who else could finish at 3-2. New Zealand still in a good spot if they beat Russia. Austria and Australia will also be looking at potentially getting to 3-2 as well. So a lot to be said about those tiebreakers, and it's certainly a very close group.
Yeah, New Zealand and Australia tomorrow, of course, here on Play Hearthstone with our American compatriots in that one.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be an exciting one. But speaking of exciting, we still have another series, another 2 series to be precise. But next up is going to be Italy versus Chile, or Chile, should I say. Let's see how that one plays out in just a few minutes.
We're almost there. Quiet down, everyone. This is not like any of our previous expeditions. This will be far more ambitious. We're stepping into a land of primordial wonder. Infused with astonishing elemental energies. The plant life here holds very unusual properties. So don't touch anything. And while you may be excited to see the local fauna, you might want to make sure they don't see you. Because their powers of adaptation are devastating. Make no mistake, we will be tested at every turn. But if we stay on our guard, we might just survive. Now then, are you ready? Then let's journey into Ongoro Crater.